Hi everybody, Tim's here. I'm just going to kind of show you what I've diagnosed for the update and refinishing of my 1980 O'Day Daysailer II. So step was getting the boat flipped over and moved into my workshop, aka my garage. So what we got is a lot of cosmetic work that needs to be done. The boat's finish is worn out, so I'm going to repaint it with a 2 Parks Epifanes paint. And before I do that, I'm going to have to do plenty of prep work. So the hole is going to need to be faired and filled. There's some glue on this when some repairs were done to it. The repairs are a little bit rough looking, but I think I'm just going to fair over and call it good. And if I lose a couple of knots, at least I've got an excuse why I'm not winning the race. Centerboard, pulled it up. A lot of nicks in there, so some high density West System fillers in there will work fine, and I'm not even going to worry about painting it as it never sees the light of day, the UV at all. Plenty of little scratches and a couple of impact. Here's an example of an impact point that crazed the gel coat, so I'll go ahead and scrape that out and make sure that fares in so that doesn't rear its head again. So overall, I got myself into a repair job, which didn't look too terrible from the outset. Painting it, I know, is going to be a bit of a messy job, sanding and fairing and getting it all ready, but that was to be expected. So what I didn't expect to find is, so when I flipped over the hole and started looking at it, everything looked pretty much cosmetic, and I started to come around to the transom and I stuck my fingers in some of these drain holes, and they were awfully wet and punky. So as you can see, what I did is I drilled a number of probes into the transom, and you can see I extended out from where I thought the damage was here in the through hole. Drain plug, and wet everywhere. Came out a little bit further, wet but not soft. Damp out here. So I just bit the bullet and decided that I better pull the transom fiberglass skin off and take a look at it. And it was pretty much a mess. That's some squish. So in order to get the skin of the transom off, you have to make a somewhat of a clean cut, and what I've got here is about a 2.5 inch away from the gunnel and the hole itself, the round part of the hole. And that's going to be, once I'm ready to repair it, I'm going to have to grind that away about a 12 to 1 ratio, so about 2 inches on each side of this cut, in order to put a piece of cloth in there. Then I'll be able to fair it up. So how did I get in there? Well, I just used one of these oscillating multi-tools in order to cut that away. Did it carefully, and didn't have to worry about getting too deep in it, because the transom is probably a good 2 inches thick, including the fiberglass skins on it. So I just went underneath it, and then it was pretty easy. Where it was very wet, it just fell away. And then I just used my putty knife little by little in order to kind of pull it away. I went ahead and stripped away in these areas the real punky pieces of the plywood. Still a little bit of damp, but really scraped a lot away to find out where there was some solid wood, and there's plenty of it. It's pretty solid all the way over here and down, so it was classic sort of water ingression, moving laterally out. Whoever owned this boat before, I think, was the source of the problem. They drilled through the transom into the bilge area to allow water which was trapped inside the bilge to come out. The problem is they did nothing to seal off the plywood and the transom wood that was located therein. So I'm guessing this is the source of where it came in. This was wet, but not as bad, and still very solid when you stick your finger into it, where the brass plug was involved. So what I've done is scrape everything off. In order to accelerate the drying, I've put in a number of holes, and the idea is that I've angled these holes down, you know, not 45, but something ideal would be 45. And I'm going to come back once it's dried and fill these up with a penetrating epoxy sealer that will use capillary action to come out as far as it can. And then fill those holes up with a thickened epoxy mix. And then I'll have this honeycomb, hopefully of saturated wood, which will last me a good long time. So this is all drying up pretty well. I've had a fan on it for the past couple of days. I'm going to probably give it a couple of more, but I'm allowing the holes to aerate that wood transom, and you want to get it dry before you start applying epoxy, or otherwise you're wasting your time and it's not going to adhere well. So we'll give it a good 4 days and evaluate it over the weekend if we're ready to move forward. If not, I'll just put it off for a couple more days. The last thing I want to do is rush this repair. Okay, so today I'm going to take these holes and fill them with a thickened epoxy. The color of it's a little bit darker now because I put the CP's clear penetrating epoxy sealer on it to just kind of impregnate epoxy in it to hopefully keep it nice and dry. One thing I wanted to show you is listen to the difference over here where there was not any sort of rot damage. Much sharper. Much duller. So that's how you can go ahead and test and see whether or not you have any rot damage. So what I'm doing right now is I'm taking and putting some really thickened epoxy, and I'm using microfibers. I didn't have any Cablasil to fill in those parts where that punky wood is. And that stuff's going to be really hard to sand, so the whole goal, we try to get it as smooth as possible so I can put my transom skin back on. And there you can see this stuff comes off really easy with that little bit of wax. You know, a wax ring is $2.50 or so at the hardware store. So I'm at a bit of a milestone today. I've gone ahead and faired the hull, and you're taking a look at the transom right now, and I'll give you a walk around of the rest of the hull. Did a lot of fairing of gouges and imperfections. Here's an impact spider web that I ground down and pulled out. Just followed everything that the Guggen's brothers say at West System about how to repair these types of defects. And then I just sanded. And you know what, I didn't take any video of the sanding because I think if you were to see what I actually did, you'd probably want to run and hide. But this is it, and tomorrow I'm going to go ahead and put down a coat of primer. If the weather cooperates, it looks like it's going to be ideal, and then I can follow up with a couple of coats of 2-part polyurethane. I'm pretty excited about that process. My friend over at Cranberry Island Boatyard, Sam Donald, recommends Epifanes 2-part polyurethane. Gave me a lot of good tips about how to go ahead and handle it and set up, and he emphasized sand, sand, sand. So yes, Sam, I did get that message loud and clear. And we'll go ahead and wash this down. We'll put go ahead and put a de-waxer, degreaser on it, get it nice and clean, tack cloth. And with a little bit of cooperation of the weather, I'm going to cross my fingers and get this paint job done in a couple of days. A couple of things I wanted to show you. You can see these holes that I have right here and this round one as well. These are the probes that I found, backfilled those. But this is where my my rudder bracket's going to go in those 3 holes. So what I did is I fitted the bracket in there, and then I came back and I over drilled it with about, oh gosh, I think it was probably 1/2 inch or larger bit on that, and the bolts that go through are much smaller. So those are all filled in. I'm gonna repack that one a bit with a little bit more before I finish up tonight, and then I'll have that nice and impervious to any water, as that will be surrounding the hole. So I'll give you a shot after I get that first coat of primer on. And yeah, it's been a grind of a job, but I think she's going to turn out nice. So we'll just have to wait and see. All right, here's the reveal. This is 2 coats of Epifanes 2-part polyurethane rolled on over a coat of primer. This is sky blue. This is actually a all grip color that was custom mixed for me. Went on 2 thin coats. A couple of spots maybe I was a little bit too cheap and laid it on too lightly, but overall a beautiful gloss, very hard, and I just need to give it a couple of more days to really cure off and harden up, and then I'll put her in the water and go sailing.